Peter stopped speaking on the day his mother disappeared without a trace. 2 years later, a new caregiver arrives at the mansion with a hidden past and a silent mission. As she gains the boy's trust, she discovers that the truth was buried by the one who should have protected him the most. And what Peter reveals is strong enough to bring down even the most powerful name in the family. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We continue! I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. The Albright Mansion, with its imposing architecture and meticulously manicured gardens, stood as a monument to power in the most exclusive gated community in the Hamptons, New York. Seen from the outside, it exuded opulence and perfection. Inside, however, the silence weighed like lead. Henry Maxwell Albright adjusted his tie in front of the Venetian mirror in the grand entrance hall. At 38, he carried on his shoulders not only the responsibility of managing the family's business empire, but also the inexplicable absence of his wife, Felicity, who had left 2 years ago, leaving behind a son who hadn't uttered a single word since. "Has Peter come down for breakfast yet?" he asked the housekeeper, Mrs. Nellie, who had served in the residence for 3 decades. "No, Mr. Henry, the boy is drawing in his room, as always." "Shall I call him?" "Let him be. When the new caregiver arrives, let me know immediately." Henry consulted his wristwatch, an heirloom from his grandfather. 23 professionals had passed through that house in the last 2 years. 23 failures. None had managed to make Peter speak again. The boy, now 7, lived in a world of his own, communicating only through enigmatic drawings that seemed to contain secrets no one could decipher. Upstairs, Peter sat on the floor of his room, surrounded by sheets of paper and colored pencils. His eyes, identical to his absent mother's, were fixed on a drawing where 3 figures could be seen: a tall man, a small boy, and a woman whose face had been covered by furious black scribbles. The doorbell rang promptly at 9. Mrs. Nellie hurried to the main gate, where a young woman waited. She wore a simple but elegant dress, and a delicate silk scarf covered part of her face, disguising what appeared to be a scar. "Good morning. I'm Louisa Campbell, the new caregiver." Mrs. Nellie examined her with curiosity. Unlike the previous ones, she didn't carry briefcases full of therapeutic toys or child psychology manuals. There was only a serenity in her gaze that intrigued the housekeeper. "Please come in, Mr. Henry is waiting." As they entered the study, Henry rose, extending his hand in a formal greeting. "Miss Campbell, I appreciate your punctuality. I imagine the agency explained our peculiar situation." "Yes, Mr. Albright, I'm aware that your son hasn't spoken since his mother left 2 years ago." "Exactly. And I presume you've also been informed that we don't tolerate questions about my wife's whereabouts. It's a closed subject in this house." Louisa nodded, but her eyes revealed a spark that Henry couldn't decipher. "I understand perfectly, sir. I'm here to help Peter, not to question family matters." "Excellent. Mrs. Nellie will show you to his room and introduce you to my son. I have an important meeting now. I'll be back late this afternoon." As Henry left, Louisa noticed a portrait above the fireplace. A woman of radiant beauty held a smiling boy of approximately 5 years old. She quickly averted her gaze when she noticed Mrs. Nellie watching her. "Come, I'll take you to Peter's room," the housekeeper said, leading her up the marble staircase. In the upstairs hallway, Louisa felt the atmosphere change. The luxury remained, but there was something oppressive in the air, as if the walls held painful secrets. "Before we go in," Mrs. Nellie whispered, checking if they were alone, "I need to tell you something." The other caregivers arrived here full of techniques and theories, wanting immediate results. All of them failed. "Peter is a good boy, just broken inside." Louisa gently touched the housekeeper's arm. "Thank you for sharing that with me. For Mrs. Nellie, I promise my approach will be different." The bedroom door was ajar. Mrs. Nellie knocked lightly before announcing, "Peter, dear, this is Louisa, your new caregiver." The boy didn't lift his eyes from the paper he was drawing on. Louisa entered alone at her own request and sat on the floor at a respectful distance. "Hello, Peter. Can I stay here for a while, just watching you draw?" Silence. But for a briefest instant, the boy's eyes met hers before returning to his drawing. Louisa didn't insist. For an hour she remained there, just breathing the same air as Peter, occasionally commenting on the colors he chose or the strokes he made, without expecting answers. When lunch was announced, Peter refused to come downstairs as usual. Louisa asked permission to have lunch with him in his room, which surprised Mrs. Nelly. In 2 years, no caregiver has managed to make him eat in company, the housekeeper commented, bringing the trays. During the meal, Louisa softly hummed a lullaby. Peter stopped eating for a moment, his eyes fixed on his plate. "Do you know that song, Peter?" Louisa asked gently. The boy didn't respond, but a solitary tear rolled down his face. It was the first sign of emotion he had shown in months, as Mrs. Nelly would later confide. Late in the afternoon, when Henry returned, he found Louisa arranging a small bookshelf in his son's room. "How was the first day?" he asked, keeping his voice low so as not to disturb Peter, who was sleeping. "It was productive, sir. Your son is extremely observant and sensitive. Any progress regarding his speech?" "Mr. Albright, perhaps we need to redefine what we consider progress," Peter communicated today in his own way. Henry frowned. "Explain yourself." "He showed me some of his drawings. In all of them, the figure I presume to be his mother appears scratched out. This isn't a lack of communication. It's a clear message about his pain." Henry's expression hardened. "Miss Campbell, I'm not paying for amateur psychological analyses. I'm interested in concrete results." Louisa maintained her composure. "I understand your frustration, sir. I only ask for a chance to implement my approach. I need your trust." Before Henry could respond, the phone in his pocket vibrated. As he checked the screen, his face paled. "I need to take this. We'll continue this conversation tomorrow." Alone with the sleeping Peter, Louisa allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. She adjusted the scarf covering part of her face and took an old folded photograph from her pocket. In it, a much younger Felicity smiled next to Louisa, both wearing university graduation dresses. "I promised I'd take care of him, Felicity," she murmured, quickly putting the photo away when she heard footsteps in the hallway. It was Mrs. Nelly, bringing tea. "Mr. Henry asked me to tell you that his father, Mr. Anthony, is coming for dinner today. He's a demanding man." She hesitated, carefully choosing her words. Perhaps it's best not to mention theories about Peter's drawings. "Why?" The housekeeper lowered her voice even further. "Mr. Anthony never approved of Mrs. Felicity's ideas about raising children. He said she spoiled the boy too much." "And what happened to her?" Louisa ventured, feigning ignorance. "Why did she leave?" Mrs. Nelly's face transformed into a mask of apprehension. "That's not a matter for discussion in this house, dear. If you want to keep your job, never ask that question, especially not near Mr. Anthony." When the housekeeper left, Louisa approached the bed where Peter slept. Delicately, she brushed a lock of hair from his forehead. "I'll find out the truth, little one," she whispered, "and I'll bring your voice back." Dinner at the Albright mansion proceeded in an oppressive silence, broken only by the clinking of silver cutlery against imported china. Anthony Maxwell Albright, at 68, maintained the impeccable posture of someone who had spent his life commanding people. His eyes, incisive as blades, studied the new caregiver seated at the table. "So, Miss Campbell, is it?" he finally asked after sipping some red wine. "What makes you different from the 20-something other professionals who have passed through this house?" Louisa placed her napkin on her lap with measured gestures. "I believe, Mr. Anthony, that the difference lies in patience. Many seek quick results with traumatized children. I prefer to build bridges of trust first." "Traumatized?" Anthony raised an eyebrow, turning to his son. "Henry, what kind of nonsense is this young woman telling my grandson?" "Father, Miss Campbell is merely—" "Your son is suffering, Mr. Anthony," Louisa interrupted with a serene but firm voice. "That's not nonsense. It's a fact, and my role here is to help him process that suffering." The silence that followed was so thick it could be cut with a knife. Henry stared at Louisa with a mixture of surprise and apprehension. No one confronted his father that way. "Interesting," Anthony replied, unexpectedly calm. "And that scarf on your face? Is it some kind of fashion statement, or does it hide something?" "A scar from an accident, sir. I prefer to cover it so as not to frighten children." Anthony smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You know, Miss Campbell, I appreciate people who hide their flaws. It shows an awareness of how appearances matter." Henry cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable. "Father, shall we change the subject? Miss Campbell has only been here one day, and she's already making judgments about my grandson's emotional state. Curious, isn't it? The rest of dinner passed in silent tension. When Anthony finally bid farewell, not without reminding Henry about an important shareholders' meeting the next morning, Louisa realized she had attracted the patriarch's attention and possibly his distrust. My father can seem intense, Henry explained as they walked down the hallway, but he only wants what's best for our family. Since my wife left, he's been my main support in business and with Peter. I understand, Louisa replied carefully. If I may ask, Mr. Albright, what was the relationship like between your father and your wife? Henry's expression hardened instantly. That's not relevant to your work here, Miss Campbell. Good night. The next morning, Louisa found Mrs. Nellie in the kitchen preparing breakfast. The housekeeper seemed nervous, constantly checking the wall clock. Did something happen, Mrs. Nellie? The older woman hesitated, but then approached, speaking in a low voice. Mr. Anthony called very early. He asked for information about you. He wanted to know where you came from, your previous references. And what did you tell him? Only what the agency informed us. That's all. Mrs. Nellie wrung a dish towel between her fingers. But I'm scared, dear. When Mr. Anthony starts asking questions like that, it usually means trouble. Louisa nodded, grateful for the warning. She knew she would need to accelerate her plans. Mrs. Nellie, I know we shouldn't talk about it, but would Felicity really abandon her son? From what I observe, Peter still deeply misses her. The housekeeper looked around, making sure they were alone. Never, she whispered with conviction. Mrs. Felicity adored that boy more than anything. She sang to him every night, invented stories, made sure to bathe him and put him to sleep, even with so many staff available. So why would she have left like that without explanation? Mrs. Nellie's gaze was a mixture of fear and suppressed indignation. That I don't know, dear. I only know it happened overnight. No luggage, no goodbye. Mr. Henry said she only left a note saying she needed to find her own path, but no one ever saw that note. And Mr. Anthony took control of everything after that. The company, the house, even Peter's education. He was the one who insisted the boy be treated by specialists, instead of receiving love and time to process the loss. Louisa absorbed every word, confirming suspicions she already held. She needed proof, however, something concrete she could show Henry. Does the attic still hold Felicity's belongings? She asked, trying to sound casual. A few boxes, yes. Mr. Anthony wanted everything donated, but Mr. Henry insisted on keeping them. For Peter, he said. Mrs. Nellie paused as if weighing whether she should continue. Want to know what I think? Mr. Henry still loves her. He still hopes she'll come back. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Claudia Vickers, a middle-aged woman with an austere expression, who entered the kitchen unannounced. Good morning. Mrs. Nellie, she greeted coldly before evaluating Louisa from head to toe. You must be the new nanny. Caregiver, Louisa corrected. And you are? Claudia Vickers, Mr. Anthony's personal secretary. I came to bring some documents for Mr. Henry before the meeting. She placed a folder on the counter, and also to check if everything is in order with the new hire. The condescending tone did not go unnoticed. Everything is perfectly in order. Mrs. Vickers, Louisa replied, maintaining a polite smile. That's good. It seems Mr. Anthony is quite interested in your work. Claudia cast a significant glance at Mrs. Nellie. He mentioned that it might be useful for us to have a weekly report on Peter's progress. Directly to him, you understand. I understand perfectly. My contract, however, states that I report only to Peter's father. Who is my employer? Claudia's eyes narrowed slightly. Of course, but Mr. Anthony is the one who truly finances this house, including your salary. A professional courtesy wouldn't be too much, don't you think? Before Louisa could respond, the sound of small footsteps drew everyone's attention. Peter stood at the kitchen entrance, observing the scene with attentive eyes. Peter, exclaimed Mrs. Nellie, relieved by the interruption. Do you want breakfast now, my dear? The boy didn't respond, but his eyes fixed on Louisa, as if seeking confirmation that she was still there. Louisa smiled gently and extended her hand. Good morning, Peter. Do you want to help me make pancakes today? To everyone's surprise, Peter approached and took the offered hand. He didn't speak, but the gesture, the first voluntary contact with anyone in months, as Mrs. Nellie would later whisper, spoke for itself. Claudia observed the scene with an inscrutable expression. before bidding farewell with a glacial formality. While helping Peter with breakfast, Louisa noticed an object partially hidden in the boy's hand, a small teddy bear, worn by time and affection, which he held protected like a treasure. "What a beautiful bear," she commented softly. "Does he have a name?" Peter didn't respond, but squeezed the bear tighter against his chest. "Mrs. Nellie, do you know whose bear this is?" The housekeeper looked on tenderly. Mrs. Felicity gave it to him on his 4th birthday. Its name was Dudu. She sewed it herself. Peter hasn't slept without it since. At that moment, Louisa was certain she was on the right track. A woman who sews a teddy bear for her son wouldn't abandon him without a devastating reason. And she was determined to find out what that reason was. After breakfast, Louisa suggested a different activity. Instead of staying in the room, she proposed a walk through the mansion's gardens. With Mrs. Nellie's permission, she took Peter to explore the vast grounds. "Shall we play explorers today?" she suggested, as they walked among perfectly pruned rose bushes. "We can look for hidden treasures." That's when she noticed a small secluded pavilion, almost hidden by flowering vines. Peter followed her gaze and unexpectedly pulled her hand in that direction. The pavilion was locked, but through the dusty windows, Louisa could see a space that appeared to have been an art studio. Covered canvases, dried paint pots, abandoned brushes. "Was this your mother's special place?" she asked softly. Peter didn't speak, but his eyes welled up with tears. He touched the window glass with his fingertips, in a silent caress. Back at the house, Louisa found Henry rushing out for his meeting. He paused briefly upon seeing them returning from the garden. "Peter went outside?" he asked, genuinely surprised. "He hasn't left the house in months." "We discovered the pavilion at the end of the garden," Louisa commented. "It seems it was a studio." Henry's expression transformed into a mask of barely disguised pain. "That was Felicity's place. She painted—" His voice faltered for an instant. "It's been closed since she left. No one goes in there." "Mr. Albright, your son seems to have a strong connection to that place. Perhaps we could—" "No," he cut in, regaining his composure. "That place remains closed. Please don't take Peter there again." As Henry walked away, Louisa noticed something he had dropped, a small keychain with several keys. Among them one labeled Studio. That night, after the entire house fell silent, Louisa slipped quietly down the dark hallway. The studio key weighed in her pocket, having been discreetly picked up earlier. Her conscience protested against the invasion of privacy, but the urgency of finding answers for Peter was greater. The mansion's gardens seemed like a labyrinth under the silvery moonlight. Louisa followed the stone path, guided by recent memory until she reached the vine-covered pavilion. The lock, rusted by time, yielded after some effort. The interior of the studio revealed itself as a time capsule. The dense air carried the scent of dried paints and hastily abandoned memories. Louisa turned on the small flashlight she had brought, illuminating a space that seemed to have been frozen in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. An easel still held an unfinished canvas, a portrait of Peter smiling, with only half of his face completed. On a wooden table, brushes rested in a pot, as if awaiting their owner's return to continue the interrupted work. "What really happened to you, Felicity?" Louisa murmured as she examined the place. On the opposite wall, a photo mural told the visual story of the family, Felicity radiant with baby Peter in her arms. The three of them, Felicity, Henry, and the little one, on a picnic at the beach. They formed a visibly happy family, contradicting the narrative of an unhappy woman who had abandoned everything. Louisa noticed something curious. In many of the more recent photos, Anthony appeared in the background, always observing, never truly participating. His austere demeanor contrasted with the evident joy of the others. A partially open drawer caught her attention. Inside, she found a leather-bound blue diary. She hesitated briefly before opening it, aware of the invasion it represented, but convinced of the necessity. The pages revealed Felicity's delicate handwriting. Louisa quickly flipped to the final entries, dated 2 years ago. March 10th. Anthony again pressured Henry about expanding the company overseas. He said it was the future he built for his son. When I mentioned the risks and environmental impact, I was treated like an inconvenient busybody. Henry remained silent as always. How long will he remain divided between us? March 15th. The argument during dinner was terrible. Anthony insinuated that my progressive ideas were harming Peter's education, simply because I suggested public school instead of the Swiss boarding school he so strongly advocates for. Peter is only 5 years old, for goodness sake. Henry again took no stand. So I'm tired of fighting this current alone. March 22nd, I found Anthony in Henry's office examining my bank statements. When I questioned him, he said he was protecting the family's assets. I felt violated, exposed. Henry minimized the incident, saying his father only wants to ensure our financial future. But something is wrong, I feel it. The final entry was dated March 28th, 2 days before Felicity's disappearance, as Louisa already knew. Anthony came to me today alone. What he said, the threats, I can't even write it down. My world crumbled. If it's true, if he really has that power, I need to protect Peter at all costs, even if it means the unthinkable. I left a letter for my son, hidden where only someone who truly loves him will know to look. One day when it's safe, I'll come back for him. Until then, I hope Dudu comforts him on lonely nights. Louisa felt a chill run down her spine. The mention of the teddy bear, Dudu, was the confirmation she needed. There was a letter hidden somewhere, possibly inside the toy itself. Continuing her search, she found a metal box under a pile of canvases. Inside, letters addressed to Peter, all returned unopened, with stamps of addressee unknown or address non-existent. The handwriting was undoubtedly the same as in the diary. Felicity tried to stay in contact, Louisa concluded, feeling a mixture of sadness and indignation. Someone intercepted the letters. At the bottom of the box, a business card caught her attention. Dr. Marcus Smith, family law attorney, followed by a phone number and an address in South Beach, Miami. She carefully put it in her pocket, along with one of the returned letters. Before leaving, she photographed some pages of the diary and the photo mural with her cell phone. She put everything back exactly as she had found it and locked the pavilion, determined to visit the lawyer at the first opportunity. The next morning, Louisa woke early, planning how to briefly escape to meet Dr. Marcus. The solution came unexpectedly when Henry announced during breakfast, "I need you to take Peter to the pediatrician today at 10 a.m. Mrs. Nellie would normally accompany him, but she asked for the day off to deal with personal matters." "Of course, sir. No problem. Claudia will pick you up. She knows the way and will help with any necessary documentation." Louisa immediately understood. Claudia would be there to watch her, not to help. She would need to be clever. At the doctor's office, while Peter was being examined, Louisa saw an opportunity when Claudia had to step out to take a call from Anthony. "Doctor," she whispered quickly to the physician, a grey-haired man who seemed genuinely concerned about Peter's condition. "The boy lost his speech due to emotional trauma. I believe he needs psychological support, not just physical." The doctor nodded, understanding. "I fully agree. I'll recommend weekly sessions with a child psychologist right here at the clinic. Dr. Regina is excellent in these cases." When Claudia returned, the doctor was already writing the referral. "I recommended weekly psychological support," he informed her. "The first session can be tomorrow if there's availability." "I'll have to consult Mr. Anthony," Claudia replied automatically. "I'm afraid this is a medical recommendation." "Madam," the doctor retorted with professional authority, "the legal guardian is the father, and I've already signed the referral in his name. Unless you wish to question my professional competence." Claudia backed down, visibly annoyed. Louisa hid a smile of satisfaction. Weekly sessions outside the mansion would mean regular opportunities for her investigations. On the way back, she convinced Claudia to make a stop at a bookstore. "Peter needs new activity books, recommended by the doctor to stimulate his cognition," she explained, knowing that the mention of a medical recommendation would silence any objection. At the bookstore, while Claudia watched Peter in the children's section, Louisa took the opportunity to use a public phone in the side corridor and call the number on the lawyer's card. "Dr. Marcus Smith's office. Good afternoon," a secretary answered. "Good afternoon. I urgently need an appointment with the doctor. It's about Felicity Albright's case." A brief silence on the other end. "Can you come tomorrow at 9 a.m.? The doctor will have a break between appointments. I'll be there." "Thank you." Back at the mansion, Louisa found Mrs. Nellie returning from her day off, looking agitated. "Did something happen?" she asked when they were alone in the kitchen. The housekeeper looked around before responding in a low voice. "I went to Mrs. Felicity's parents' old house in Greenwich Village, New York. They passed away years ago, but the neighbor, Mrs. Zelda, still lives there. She practically raised Felicity after she became an orphan." "And what did you find out?" "Mrs. Zelda said she received a call from Felicity about a year ago. It was quick, she seemed scared. She just said she was fine and living in the Berkshires. She asked that if anyone asked about her, she should say she hadn't heard from her." Louisa absorbed the information, feeling a spark of hope. The Berkshires, a mountainous region, wasn't that far. If Felicity was still there— "Mrs. Nellie, what happened between Anthony and Felicity? You were here. You must have noticed something." The housekeeper sighed deeply. "Mr. Anthony never accepted Felicity. He thought Henry should have married someone from a traditional family, not an orphan art teacher. When Peter was born, things got worse. Felicity wanted to raise him with simple values, while Anthony insisted his grandson should be prepared to take over the family empire. And Henry? Whose side was he on? That's the problem, dear. Henry always stayed in the middle, trying to please both. He loves Felicity, I have no doubt about that, but he could never cut the umbilical cord with his father." Mrs. Nellie lowered her voice even further. "In the weeks before Mrs. Felicity left, I heard several arguments. Mr. Anthony threatened to cut Henry out of the company if he didn't control his wife." A noise at the door interrupted the conversation. It was Peter watching them with his attentive, sad eyes. "Come here, my dear," Mrs. Nellie called affectionately. "Do you want some hot chocolate?" While the housekeeper prepared the drink, Louisa noticed that Peter was carrying something besides his inseparable teddy bear, a new drawing. In it, a faceless female figure reached out to what appeared to be a small boy, separated by a large, menacing shadow. "That's a very nice drawing, Peter," Louisa commented softly. "Who are these people?" As expected, she received no verbal response. But the boy pointed to the teddy bear and then to the female figure, a clear association. "Is it your mother?" Louisa ventured. Peter nodded slightly, the first gesture of direct communication since Louisa arrived. "And this big shadow here, who is it?" The boy looked at the kitchen door, as if fearing someone might enter at any moment. Then, slowly, he pointed upwards, to the upstairs floor where Anthony's study was when he visited the mansion. At that moment, Louisa was certain that Peter knew much more than everyone imagined. The silence was not just the result of trauma, it was a defense, perhaps even a silent protest against what he had perceived, even with his childlike eyes. "Your teddy bear." "Do," Louisa said, carefully choosing her words. "Does he keep secrets?" Peter's eyes widened. With a protective movement, he hugged the teddy bear against his chest. "It's okay," Louisa reassured him. "Dudu is safe with you, and you are safe with me, I promise." The next morning dawned rainy, typical of a New York autumn. Louisa eagerly awaited the time to take Peter to his first session with the psychologist, planning to use that time to visit Dr. Marcus Smith's office. "I managed to convince Henry to let me take Peter alone today," Mrs. Nellie commented as she helped Louisa prepare the boy. "I said it would be better for the therapeutic process if he felt less observed." "Thank you, Mrs. Nellie. That will help a lot." "Just be careful, dear." Claudia called 3 times this morning, wanting to confirm the time and address of the clinic. "I'm sure she'll inform Mr. Anthony." Louisa nodded, understanding the implication. They could be watched. As they left the mansion, she noticed a black car parked discreetly across the street. She decided to be cautious. In the taxi, she asked the driver to take a longer route, passing through downtown before heading to South Beach. "We're taking a little ride before your appointment, Peter. Is that okay with you?" The boy didn't respond, but looked out the window with curiosity, observing the city in motion, a welcome change in his isolated routine. They arrived at the commercial building where the lawyer's office was located, 40 minutes before the psychologist's appointment. For enough time, Louisa hoped. "I need to take care of something quick here before we go to your appointment, Peter. It will be our little secret, okay?" On the 12th floor, Dr. Marcus Smith's office had a sober and welcoming decor. The secretary, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, looked with curiosity at the silent boy holding Louisa's hand. "Good morning. I have an appointment with Dr. Marcus about Felicity Albright's case." The secretary's expression subtly changed. "Ah, yes. The doctor is waiting. You can go in." The lawyer, a man of approximately 60, stood up to greet them, his gaze immediately fixed on Peter, with a look of recognition that did not go unnoticed by Louisa. Yes, this is Peter, Felicity's son, and I am Louisa Campbell, his new caregiver." The lawyer indicated the chairs in front of his desk. "Please, sit down. I confess I'm surprised. I never thought anyone from the Albright household would come to me, especially bringing the boy. I'm not here officially, Doctor. In fact, I'm investigating Felicity's disappearance on my own." "I see." He studied Louisa for a moment. "And what is your real interest in this case, Miss Campbell? Or should I say, what is your real name?" Louisa hesitated, looking at Peter, who seemed absorbed in a small aquarium in the corner of the room. "My real name is Louisa Moore. I'm Felicity's cousin and Peter's godmother, although he probably doesn't remember me. I've been out of the country for the past few years, doing a master's in special education in England. When I returned and heard what had happened, I decided to investigate. Why the disguise? Because Anthony Maxwell Albright would never allow a relative of Felicity's to get close to Peter." Louisa showed the scarf covering part of her face. "This scar is real, the result of a car accident 5 years ago, but it serves perfectly to justify the disguise." The lawyer nodded, seemingly assessing the situation. "What exactly do you know, Louisa?" "I know Felicity wouldn't abandon her son voluntarily. I found her diary in the studio and returned letters she sent to Peter. The last entry mentioned threats from Anthony and a hidden letter for her son." Dr. Marcus stood up, went to a file cabinet, and pulled out a folder. "Felicity came to me 2 days before she disappeared. She was visibly distraught." He opened the folder, revealing documents. Anthony had compiled a dossier against her, with false accusations of mental instability and inappropriate behavior. It had forged testimonies from employees, manipulated medical reports, even photos with distorted context. For what purpose? Her custody. He intended to use it so that Henry would obtain sole custody of Peter, should Felicity challenge the control he exerted over his grandson's education. But that was just the beginning. The lawyer lowered his voice. Anthony threatened to publicly expose this material if Felicity didn't disappear from their lives. He said he would destroy her reputation in such a way that she would never be able to approach her son again. Louisa felt her blood run cold. And Henry? Did he know about this? According to Felicity, not completely. Henry knew his father disapproved of the marriage and had reservations about how she educated Peter, but he didn't know the extent of Anthony's manipulations. He was always impressionable when it came to his father. Where is Felicity now? In the Berkshires, using the name Regina Silva. She lives discreetly, teaching art at a community school. The lawyer hesitated. She tried many times to get news of Peter, but Anthony surrounded the family in such a way that contact is practically impossible. I need to see her. That would be extremely risky, Louisa. Anthony has people monitoring Felicity's movements. If he finds out she made contact with anyone from the house, especially with Peter. Doctor, Peter hasn't spoken in 2 years. He lives in a world of silence and loneliness. He needs to know his mother didn't abandon him. The lawyer looked at the boy, who was now sitting quietly, hugging his teddy bear, seemingly oblivious to the conversation. There's a way. He wrote something on a piece of paper. This is the address of a cafe in Santa Monica. Felicity comes to New York once a month to leave a letter for Peter with me, although none have been delivered. She'll be there tomorrow at 3 p.m. Louisa carefully put the paper away. Thank you, Doctor. I'll do my best to bring him. Before you go, there's something Felicity left for Peter, in case someone trustworthy came on her behalf. The lawyer opened a drawer and took out a sealed envelope. It's a letter explaining everything, in terms a child can understand. Louisa accepted the envelope with trembling hands. It was the evidence she needed, proof that Felicity had never abandoned her son. One last question, Doctor. Why would Anthony do all this? Why such determination to drive Felicity away? Control, Louisa. Pure and simple control. Felicity represented a threat to the empire he built. She encouraged Henry to question unethical business practices, influenced his decisions. But mainly, She was raising Peter with different values than those Anthony considered essential for the future heir of his empire. He couldn't tolerate that. As they left the office, time was tight to get to Peter's appointment. Louisa carefully put the envelope in her bag, planning to show it to the boy at the appropriate moment. The psychologist, Dr. Marina, greeted them with a welcoming smile. After a brief explanation about Peter's condition, she asked to speak with him alone. "It's standard procedure," she explained gently. "Children sometimes express themselves better without the presence of familiar adults." While waiting in the waiting room, Louisa received a message that made her heart race. It was from Mrs. Nellie. Anthony showed up at the mansion unexpectedly. "He's furious because Peter isn't here." Claudia told him about the appointment. "He wants to know exactly where you are and demands you return immediately. Be careful." Almost simultaneously, her phone rang. It was Henry. "Miss Campbell, where exactly are you with my son?" Louisa took a deep breath before answering. "At Dr. Marina's clinic, as agreed. Peter is in his session now. My father is concerned. He says this psychologist hasn't been properly vetted." "It was a medical recommendation, sir. From the pediatrician you yourself chose." There was a pause, and Louisa could hear Anthony's authoritative voice in the background. "As soon as the appointment is over, bring Peter directly home," Henry ordered, sounding tense. "My father wishes to speak with you." The call ended abruptly. Louisa felt a chill of apprehension. Was Anthony suspecting something? Had Claudia followed them and discovered the visit to the lawyer? When Peter came out of the psychologist's room, he seemed strangely lighter. Dr. Marina signaled for Louisa to come in for a quick chat. Peter didn't speak, but he communicated through drawings, the psychologist explained, showing some papers. He repeatedly drew 3 figures, an absent woman, a sad man, and a menacing shadow over both. "It's a classic pattern of family trauma. And what do you recommend?" "First, to continue with the sessions, obviously. But there's something else." The doctor hesitated. Peter drew something interesting at the end. A 4th figure entering the scene, a woman with something on her face approaching the boy. "I believe that's you, Louisa." He's starting to trust. Back in the taxi, Louisa decided to make a detour before returning to the mansion. She needed a few minutes alone with Peter. "Shall we go to the park quickly?" she suggested, pointing to Central Park South, which was on the way. On the most secluded bench in the park, sheltered by leafy trees, Louisa looked into Peter's eyes. "Peter, I know you understand much more than people imagine. I know you miss your mother and that deep down, you know she didn't abandon you voluntarily." The boy watched her with full attention, his eyes revealing an understanding beyond his years. "Your mother left a letter for you." Louisa took the envelope from her bag. "May I read it to you?" "It will be our little secret for now." Peter looked around as if checking if they were truly alone, and then nodded almost imperceptibly. With slightly trembling hands, Louisa opened the envelope and began to read the letter written by Felicity. "My dearest Peter, my little prince, if you are reading this letter, it means you have found someone you can trust. I want you to know, with all the certainty in the world, that Mommy never wanted to leave you. I was forced to leave to protect you. Bad people threatened to do terrible things if I stayed, but not a single day passed without me thinking of you, without me trying to find a way to see you again. Do you remember our stories about heroes who have to hide to protect those they love? I'm living one of those stories now, my love. But I promise that one day we will be together again. Until then, know that you are always in my heart. May Dudu, whom we made together, keep a little of my love with you every night. With all the love in the world, Mommy." When Louisa finished reading, she noticed something extraordinary. Silent tears streamed down Peter's face. And then, in an almost inaudible whisper, the first word in 2 years, "Mommy." Louisa felt her own eyes well up. She hugged the boy tenderly. "Yes, Peter, you're Mommy, and she loves you very much." When the taxi pulled up to the Albright mansion, Louisa felt a tightness in her chest as she saw 2 luxury cars at the entrance, Anthony's and another belonging to Claudia. The approaching storm was not just meteorological. "Peter, remember our secret?" she whispered as she paid the taxi driver. The boy nodded slightly. That single whispered word in the park had broken a barrier, although he hadn't spoken more since then. Mrs. Nellie waited anxiously in the entrance hall, her face a mask of concern. They're all in the study, she informed in a low voice. Mr. Anthony is furious. He brought Patricia back. Patricia? Peter's former tutor who worked here before you. She was dismissed when she suggested the boy be sent to a boarding school, as Mr. Anthony wanted. Louisa barely had time to process the information before Claudia appeared in the hallway. Finally, she said coldly, Mr. Anthony and Mr. Henry are waiting for you in the study immediately. I'll just leave. Peter with Mrs. Nellie and... No, the boy must come too. Louisa exchanged a significant look with the housekeeper before following Claudia, holding Peter's hand firmly. The boy clutched the teddy bear against his chest with his other hand, like a protective talisman. The study, with its dark wood-panelled walls and leather-bound bookshelves, emanated an oppressive atmosphere. Anthony stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back, while Henry sat behind the imposing desk. Beside him, a woman of approximately 40 with perfectly styled hair and a severe expression. Patricia, Louisa presumed. Where have you been? Anthony's question cut through the air like a razor. At the psychologist's appointment, as recommended by the pediatrician, Louisa replied, keeping her voice calm. For 3 hours, the clinic confirmed the appointment lasted only 50 minutes. Louisa felt a chill. They had checked. Then I took Peter to a nearby park. I thought a little fresh air and... Without authorization, Anthony interrupted, turning to face her. In clear violation of established protocol. I wasn't aware that taking a child to the park required special authorization, Mr. Albright. Anthony narrowed his eyes. Miss Campbell, or whatever your real name is, do you think we are fools? Louisa's heart raced, but she maintained her composure. I don't understand what you mean. Patricia, please inform our guest what you discovered. The former tutor stepped forward, a triumphant smile on her thin lips. I investigated your background, Miss Campbell. Curiously, there's no record of any Louisa Campbell with your qualifications at the agency that supposedly sent you. More interestingly, the photograph I found of a certain Louisa Moore, Peter's cousin and godmother, shows a remarkable resemblance to you, even with that convenient scarf covering part of your face. Henry stood up, clearly shocked. Is this true? Louisa looked at Peter, who was watching the scene with wide eyes, and decided it was time for the truth. Yes, I am Louisa Moore. I am Felicity's cousin and Peter's godmother. I used a false name because I knew I would never be allowed into this house otherwise. An infiltrator, Anthony hissed, invading our privacy, manipulating a vulnerable child. The only manipulation here, Mr. Anthony, is the one you've been doing for years, Louisa retorted, feeling indignation overcome fear. Manipulating your son, driving Felicity away, keeping Peter in the dark about the truth. What truth? Henry asked, seeming genuinely confused. The truth about your wife's disappearance. Felicity didn't abandon you voluntarily, Henry. She was threatened, coerced into leaving. Anthony laughed, a cold, calculated sound. What an absurd accusation. Felicity was emotionally unstable. All the specialists confirmed that. She decided to leave because she couldn't bear the responsibilities of being an Albright. What specialists, Mr. Anthony? The same ones who provided false reports for the dossier you compiled against her. A heavy silence fell over the room. Henry looked from Louisa to his father, disbelief giving way to growing suspicion. What dossier? He finally asked. Louisa seized the opportunity. Your father created a false dossier against Felicity, Henry, with accusations of mental instability, parental neglect, inappropriate behavior. He threatened to use it to take custody of Peter from her and publicly destroy her reputation if she didn't disappear. This is ridiculous, Anthony protested, but his tone no longer carried the same conviction. Henry, are you going to believe this impostor instead of your own father? I have proof, Louisa declared. Felicity's diary, which I found in the studio. Letters she sent to Peter that were returned, even though they had the correct address. And the testimony of the lawyer she consulted before leaving, Dr. Marcus Smith. Anthony's face paled slightly at the mention of the lawyer. You went to see him today, it wasn't a question, when you should have been at Peter's medical appointment. Yes, and he confirmed everything. Felicity went to him days before disappearing, terrified by your threats. Henry seemed stunned. Father, is this true? Anthony adjusted his jacket, regaining his composure. Of course not. This woman is trying to divide our family, probably at Felicity's own behest, who must have regretted her choices. Felicity regretted nothing. Louisa's voice trembled with emotion. Except perhaps not having confronted you sooner. She has been living in the Berkshires under a false name, sending letters to her son that never arrive, trying to maintain some connection with the life you stole from her. Enough! Anthony slammed his fist on the table. Henry, I want this woman out of our house now. Patricia will immediately resume Peter's care. An unexpected movement interrupted the confrontation. Peter, who until then had been silently observing, let go of Louisa's hand and walked to the center of the room. With surprising determination for a 7-year-old, he opened the teddy bear Dudu, carefully tearing a side seam. From inside, he pulled out a small folded paper. The entire room froze. Peter walked to his father and extended the paper. Henry, with trembling hands, opened it and read aloud, "My beloved Henry, if you are reading this, something terrible has happened. I was forced to leave you to protect you. Your father threatened to destroy our lives if I didn't disappear. He has forged evidence against me, powerful enough to take Peter from both of us. He said he would use his influence to ruin your career if you supported me. I had no choice. Please protect our son. One day I will find a way back to you. With eternal love, Felicity." The silence that followed was deafening. Henry stared at his father, a storm of emotions crossing his face. Shock, pain, fury. "It's her handwriting," he finally said. His voice choked. "It's Felicity's handwriting." Anthony seemed to have aged 10 years in a few minutes. "Henry, you don't understand. I did what was necessary to protect our family, our legacy." "Forcing my wife to abandon our son?" Henry's voice rose. "Keeping me in ignorance while my son suffered in silence for 2 years. She was weakening you, changing your values, interfering in the business," Anthony defended himself. "The boy was being raised with absurd progressive ideas that would make him incapable of leading our company in the future." "Peter is 7 years old," Henry exploded, "and you destroyed our family because of your obsession with control." What no one expected was what happened next. Peter, who had been silent for 2 years, stepped forward and looking directly at his grandfather, spoke in a clear voice, "I want my mommy back." Everyone in the room froze. Mrs. Nellie, watching from the doorway, brought her hands to her face, tears streaming down her cheeks. Henry knelt before his son, barely believing it. "Peter, you spoke." "Yes, Daddy," the boy replied, his voice small but firm. "Godmother Louisa helped me understand. Mommy didn't leave because she wanted to. She was sent away." Henry hugged his son tightly while looking at Louisa over Peter's shoulder. "Where is she?" he asked, his voice choked with emotion. "In the Berkshires. Living as Regina Silver. Teaching art at a community school. We can see her tomorrow if you wish. She'll be at a cafe in Santa Monica." "That's not going to happen," Anthony intervened, regaining some of his authoritarian posture. "Henry, be rational. Think of the scandal, the public exposure. Think of the impact on the business when people find out." "Enough, Father." Henry rose, still holding Peter. "Enough manipulations, control, fear. This is my family, not an extension of your business. I want you out of my house now." Anthony paled. "You can't be serious. Everything I built, everything you have, is thanks to me." "And the price was too high," Henry replied, a new determination in his voice. "Peter, go with Mrs. Nellie now, okay? Daddy needs to sort some things out." The boy nodded, surprisingly calm. Before leaving, he approached Louisa and hugged her. "Thank you, Godmother," he whispered. When only the adults remained, Henry faced his father. "I want to see every document in that dossier against Felicity. I want to know exactly what you did, who you bribed, what threats were made. And tomorrow we will all go to meet her." "If you do that, Henry," Anthony warned, "you'll be on your own. Without the company, without financial support, without the inheritance." Henry smiled sadly. "Do you really believe any of those things matter more than seeing my son speak again, than having my wife back?" He shook his head. "You never understood, Father. You never understood what truly matters." At that moment, as she watched father and son, Louisa realized the battle was won. Peter's silence had been broken, and with it Anthony's power over that family. In Peter's room, the boy surprised Mrs. Nellie, speaking with increasing ease, as if making up for 2 years of silence. "Grandpa sent Mommy away," he explained, drawing with new, vibrant colors. "I saw them fighting. He said bad things, said he would hurt everyone if she didn't leave. I heard everything, hidden on the stairs. After that, I couldn't speak anymore. It was like the words were stuck here." He pointed to his own throat. "Oh, my little angel, why did you never tell anyone?" "Because Grandpa said bad things would happen if anyone knew. I was scared." Peter looked up with wisdom beyond his age. "But Godmother Louisa showed me that the truth is stronger than fear." Outside the room, Louisa listened to the conversation, her heart overflowing. She had kept her promise to Felicity. Now, one last step remained: the reunion. In her room that night, she wrote a message to the lawyer, Dr. Marcus, asking him to inform Felicity about the events and confirm the meeting for the next day. The response came almost immediately. "She will be there, waiting for this moment for 2 years." The next morning dawned with a clarity that seemed symbolic. After 2 years of shadows and secrets, the sun shone over New York like a promise of a new beginning. At the Albright mansion, the atmosphere was one of anxiety and expectation. Peter, sitting at the breakfast table, spoke more than he had in his entire life, as if making up for lost time. "Will she recognize me? I've grown 2 years. What if she doesn't like me anymore?" Henry, with dark circles under his eyes that revealed a sleepless night, smiled tenderly. "Son, your mother will love to see how much you've grown, and there's no way she won't like you." "Never was." Louisa observed the interaction between father and son with a mix of joy and apprehension. The transformation in Henry was remarkable. His posture more relaxed, his smile easier, as if a huge weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Still, much remained to be resolved. "Mr. Anthony called several times this morning," Mrs. Nellie informed in a low voice as she approached to serve more juice. "He hung up when I answered." Henry nodded, showing no surprise, "and he'll try everything. Threats, promises, emotional blackmail. I know his playbook well." "And what about the documents?" Louisa asked, referring to the dossier mentioned by Anthony. "I spent the night analyzing what I managed to obtain from his office files here at home." Henry lowered his voice so Peter wouldn't hear. "It's worse than we imagined. Forgeries, statements obtained through coercion of employees, manipulation of images. He even fabricated a psychiatric report stating that Felicity would be a dangerous mother." Louisa felt a shiver. "How did he manage all that?" "Money and power, Louisa. My father built an empire based on the ability to buy people and bend rules." Henry ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration. "What breaks me is knowing that I allowed this with my passivity, my willingness to believe what was convenient. You were manipulated too." "That's no excuse. I knew my father. I knew Felicity. Deep down, I always knew something didn't make sense, but I preferred not to question, not to confront." He looked at his son, who was now drawing animatedly in his notebook. "Peter paid the price for my silence." The conversation was interrupted by Claudia, who entered the dining room unannounced. "Mr. Henry, Mr. Anthony requests your urgent presence at the company's central office. A crisis situation with the shareholders." Henry did not flinch. "Tell my father I'm busy today. Family matters." "Sir," he insisted, "it's absolutely vital. The continuity of the company may be at stake." "The continuity of my family is more important." "Claudia," she cleared her throat, visibly uncomfortable. "In that case, he asked me to deliver this." She extended a sealed envelope. "He said it's his final offer." Henry opened the envelope. Inside was a check for an exorbitant amount and a handwritten note. "For a new beginning away from the spotlight. The alternative will be a scandal that will destroy all of you. Think of the boy." Without hesitation, Henry tore both. "Tell my father we are not for sale, and that I expect his letter of resignation from the board presidency by the end of the week. If he doesn't want everything to go public." Claudia paled, clearly not expecting that response. "Sir, you can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. Now, if you'll excuse us, my family has an important engagement." When Claudia left, Louisa looked at Henry with admiration. "Are you sure about this? He can really cause damage to the company, to your reputation. Let him try. I have the documents proving the forgery, witnesses willing to tell the truth now that they no longer fear reprisals. And most importantly, I have the truth on my side." Henry checked his watch. "It's time. Shall we go get Felicity?" The Mermaid Cafe in Santa Monica was an unpretentious and welcoming place, with tables on the sidewalk and a view of the ocean. At Louisa's request, Dr. Marcus had reserved a more secluded table in the back, away from curious eyes. As the taxi approached, Peter clutched the teddy bear Dudu against his chest, his anxiety almost palpable. "What if she's not there, godmother?" he whispered to Louisa. "She'll be there," Louisa assured, though her own heart was racing. "Your mother has waited for this moment for 2 years. The cafe was quiet that afternoon, a few tables occupied by tourists, students with laptops, elderly people reading newspapers, and at the most secluded table, a solitary woman with an open book, dark glasses, and a discreet hat that partially concealed her face. Felicity. Even disguised, Louisa would recognize her cousin anywhere. The elegant posture, the way she slightly tilted her head when reading, the nervous drumming of her fingers on the cup. "It's her," Louisa whispered, gently squeezing Henry's shoulder, who seemed paralyzed. Peter, however, needed no confirmation. With the infallible intuition of a child recognizing his safe haven, he let go of his father's hand and ran towards the table. "Mommy!" Felicity abruptly lifted her head. The dark glasses couldn't hide the sparkle of tears that immediately flooded her eyes. For a moment she seemed unable to move, as if fearing that the scene before her was just a cruel dream that would dissipate at the slightest movement. "Peter?" Her voice was just a whisper. "My son!" The boy threw himself into her arms with such impetus that he almost knocked over the chair. Felicity hugged him as if she could absorb him back into herself, sobbing uncontrollably. "You came back!" Peter exclaimed, his face buried in his mother's neck. "You said you'd come back, and you did. Oh, my love, my little one." Felicity covered her son's face with kisses, her hands trembling as she touched his hair, his cheeks, as if she needed to confirm he was real. "You're so big, so handsome." It was then that she looked up and saw Henry standing a few steps away, an expression of devastating emotion on his face. For an instant, time seemed to suspend between them. 2 years of separation, pain, and secrets condensed into a single glance. "Felicity," Henry's voice failed. She slowly rose, still holding Peter. "Henry, you found out the truth?" He nodded, unable to speak. Then, in 2 steps, he closed the distance between them and enveloped his wife and son in a desperate embrace, tears now running freely down his face. "Forgive me," he whispered against her hair. "For not noticing, for not protecting you, for allowing this to happen." "There's nothing to forgive," Felicity replied, touching his face with her free hand. "You were also his victim. All of us were." Louisa watched the scene a few steps away, feeling simultaneously part of and an observer of that sacred moment of family reunion. It was Felicity who saw her first and extended her hand, calling her, "Louisa." "My cousin, my friend." Her voice overflowed with gratitude. "How did you manage to do this?" Louisa approached, accepting the warm embrace. "I promised I'd take care of him, remember? It just took me a little while to fulfill it." The 4 sat at the table, Peter refusing to let go of his mother's hand for a second. Between tears and smiles, they shared fragments of their separated lives. Felicity recounted how she lived modestly in the Berkshires, teaching classes and painting under a pseudonym. Henry told of the discovered dossiers, the confrontation with Anthony, Peter's transformation. "He didn't speak for 2 years, Henry explained. "Since the day you left." "I saw you fighting, Mummy," Peter intervened, surprising everyone with his clarity. "I saw Grandpa threatening you. I was afraid to speak and make worse things happen." Felicity hugged her son with renewed strength. "Oh, my little hero, you carried that secret alone all this time." "Until Godmother Louisa arrived," Peter replied, smiling at Louisa. "She helped me understand it wasn't your fault. And she showed me your letter." Felicity looked at her cousin with infinite gratitude. "How can I ever thank you?" "You don't have to. Just seeing Peter speak again and you all reunited is reward enough." Henry cleared his throat. holding Felicity's hand across the table. "We have to talk about the future. My father won't give up easily." "He already tried today," Felicity confirmed. "Dr. Marcus called me to say he received a substantial offer to close the case once and for all." "What will we do?" Louisa asked. "I just sent an ultimatum," Henry replied. "Either he resigns voluntarily and steps aside, or we expose everything. I have copies of every forged document, every piece of evidence of the conspiracy." "That could harm the company," Felicity observed, worried. "Thousands of jobs. The company will survive, perhaps even prosper more without the questionable practices my father always encouraged." Henry squeezed her hand. "What I cannot do is allow him to have any influence over our lives from now on." Henry's cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Anthony. "I accept your terms. The letter of resignation will be delivered tomorrow. In return, I demand absolute discretion about the reasons. Not for me, but for the family's legacy." "He yielded," Henry announced, showing the message to the others. "Typical of him," Felicity commented with a sad smile. "Concerned about the legacy until the very end." "What happens now?" Peter asked, looking from one adult to another. Henry and Felicity exchanged a look full of promises. "Now, son," Felicity replied, kissing the boy's forehead, "we're going home. All together." The return to the Albright mansion that afternoon had an air of silent triumph. Mrs. Nellie waited at the door, unable to hold back tears upon seeing Felicity. "My dear girl, I knew you'd come back." The two women embraced for a long time, while Peter ran through the house announcing his mother's return to all the staff he encountered. Louisa watched the scene with a light heart, knowing it was time to step back. Her mission was accomplished. "I'll pack my things," she said discreetly to Henry. "What do you mean?" He seemed genuinely surprised. "Aren't you staying?" "My work here is done, Henry. Peter has his mother back. You need time to rebuild your family." Felicity approached, having overheard the conversation. "Don't even think about it, cousin. You're part of this family now." She took Louisa's hands in hers. "Besides, Peter would never allow his godmother to disappear from his life, not after everything." As if to confirm, the boy ran back and hugged Louisa's waist. "You promised to teach me to paint, godmother, and to make a teddy bear like Doo-Doo for my baby brother." "Baby brother?" Louisa raised her eyebrows, looking at the couple. Felicity and Henry exchanged a knowing smile. "We haven't talked about it yet," Henry replied, hugging his wife by the shoulders. "But I think Peter is right. This house needs more children, more laughter, and fewer secrets," Felicity completed. That night, under a star-filled sky, the family gathered in the mansion's garden. At Peter's request, Louisa helped him light small floating lanterns that rose into the sky as symbols of hope and a new beginning. Felicity, watching her son talking animatedly with her cousin, whispered to Henry, "I still can't believe we're all here. That feels like a dream." "A dream we'll never wake up from again," he promised, kissing her softly. In the following weeks, the transformation in the mansion was remarkable. The studio was reopened and renovated, once again becoming the creative heart of the house. Peter, now talkative and lively, charmed everyone with his blossoming personality. Henry took full control of the company, implementing changes his father had always resisted, making it more ethical and sustainable. As for Anthony, he kept his word and stepped down from the board presidency. He kept his distance from the family for the first few months, until Peter, with the wisdom and generosity typical of children, asked about his grandfather. "He did bad things, Mommy, but he's still my grandpa. Can we forgive him one day?" The question surprised Felicity, but it was Henry who answered. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or allowing the same mistakes to repeat, son. It means giving a chance for a new beginning, with new rules. If your grandfather is ready for that one day, we can consider it." That day would eventually come, not with full reconciliation, but with a cautious agreement. Anthony could visit the family on special occasions, as long as he respected the clearly established boundaries set by Henry and Felicity. Louisa remained with the family for a few months, helping with the transition, until she accepted a position as artistic director at a school for children with special needs, a dream she had always had. Even living in her own apartment, she remained a constant presence in Peter's life, joyfully fulfilling her role as godmother. On a sunny afternoon, while Felicity painted a new family portrait in the studio, now including little Gus, born exactly 9 months after the family reunion. Peter, now 9 years old, asked a question that captured the essence of the entire journey. "Mommy, why do some people keep secrets that hurt instead of speaking the truth that heals?" Felicity lowered her brush, considering the depth of the question. "Sometimes, son, people confuse power with love, control with protection. They think hiding the truth is safer than facing it. Like I did when I stopped talking? In a way, yes, but you were just a scared child. And in the end, you found the courage to break the silence when the time was right." Peter smiled, helping his almost 2-year-old brother hold his own paintbrush. "You know what, Mommy? I'm never going to stop talking again. I'm never going to be afraid to tell the truth again." Felicity kissed her son's forehead, feeling profound gratitude for the second chance life had given them, the chance to create a family where silence served only to appreciate moments of peace, never again to hide pain or lies. And so, in the Albright mansion, where once an oppressive silence echoed, now resonated laughter, conversations, and occasionally the healthy discussions of a family that had learned the hard way the invaluable worth of truth. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Peter and his family has touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey, we have prepared a special playlist with equally captivating narratives. Find it here by clicking the link on the left. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day we bring new stories that explore the complexity of family relationships and the power of truth. Let us know in the comments which part of this saga of silence and redemption moved you the most. We look forward to reading your impressions.